Welcome back to the channel and thank you for tuning in. In today's video, we are doing a complete altcoin analysis. Now, before we get into the altcoin analysis, make sure to check us out on our main YouTube channel, Mega Whale Crypto, where we post daily videos of Bitcoin focusing on the facts, the data, the technical, and the structural information. No hype, no BS, no emotion, pure raw TA. And if you're interested in more of that kind of content, you can join us on Telegram. That will be the first link down below. You'll get access to charts, updates, videos, educational posts, news events, and everything you need to stay in the loop with cryptocurrency, with Bitcoin, and the relevant economic news. And if you were interested in taking your trading to the next level, you can join us in our VIP group where we post trading setups with exact entry prices, exact targets, exact stop losses, trade justification, exclusive analysis, and so much more. You'll also get access to all of our group chats with over 700 members, our trading chart and education chat, our daily video, help, news, and trade setup chat. So you can find out more information about our VIP in the pinned comment of the free channel by clicking my name, or these two links showing you a video inside the channel and a 50-month trading track record by the first link. Check it out, guys, and let's dive into the altcoin video. Okay guys, let's get right into it. In today's video, we are taking a look at both the macro and the short-term charts for Ethereum, doing a comprehensive breakdown, exactly what is happening, what you need to be paying attention to, and the next macro and short-term moves that may occur. So as we can see here, we are on the weekly chart for Ethereum, and notably what we can see immediately is that the 50 EMA is providing a degree of resistance, a degree of dynamic resistance here for the Ethereum price since around 2 to 3 weeks ago, around the end of May 2025. We can also see we have a very clear downtrend on that RSI, signifying that although we have seen a relatively good reversal from these lows, from these points of around 1,500, 1,400, we can still see overall weekly momentum is negative. Now, although these 2 points, the downtrend on the RSI and the price being under a 50 EMA, are not necessarily bullish points, they are in fact bullish trigger points. So if we are able to break through either of these levels, this will be a very strong sign for an incredibly likely continuation upwards into our next points of major high time frame resistance. So let's go ahead and break that down really quickly. First and foremost, we have got that major downtrend on the RSI, this major trigger point which is loading. As we can see, we had the first high created around February 2024. This, of course, was sitting just shy of 4,000. We then had that higher high over here created around 4,000, just above 4,000. This was, of course, late 2024, providing, or should I say, creating a major level of horizontal resistance leading up to that $4,000 region. Of course, creating, a very slight bearish divergence with a higher closing price for that most recent higher high and a lower pivot on the RSI, creating what we would call a bearish divergence, simply suggesting that the buying strength at this point was greater than at this point, signifying possible exhaustion and a inability to sustain through these highs, which we eventually saw a breakdown resulting in deviation and then the start of what has been a major downtrend. This is going to still be, if we're looking at the macro trigger point, if we want to see Ethereum break into a brand new all-time high, we still need to break through 4,000. So 4,000 on the macro is going to be the trigger point for a new all-time high for Ethereum. To put very simply, break above 4,000, it is very likely we push well and truly above that 4,800 2021 high point and move into a brand new all-time high for Ethereum. But the big question is, what will it take for us to even get to that point? What do we need to see for Ethereum to even push into high 2,000s, into 3,000s, and eventually 4,000? Well, number one, we need to see this extended downtrend, which has been developed from that bearish divergence, eroded. We need to see the RSI pivot above this level, which would signify through the entire period of price action, this visible range over here we've taken, which is a reflection, okay? The RSI is just a derivative of this price action here. The momentum currently is still downtrending. So we need to see that RSI break upward, which would tell us for the first time through this entire period of price action, momentum is positive, which will increase the probability for a directional continuation upwards into these larger levels of liquidity. So what do we need to see for that to occur? Well, for us to see that RSI break upwards, we are going to have to push through this 50 EMA. So that is why I've stated at the start of the video that the 50 EMA and the downtrend in the RSI are both bullish trigger points, because when we break through these levels, the domino effect of doing so results in a strong directional continuation upwards. The probabilities massively skew in favor of continuations toward the upside while we are above these levels than while we are below these levels. So taking a look at the last time we broke through the 50 EMA, we can see when we broke through a 50 EMA over here in October 23, we saw a strong continuation upwards. Of course, losing the 50 EMA, we held under this level as a degree of resistance for around 2 to 3 months, finally breaking back above, seeing a strong continuation upwards, dropping back below, seeing a strong continuation downwards. So we can see how the 50 EMA has acted as a trigger point historically over the course of the last 2 years as a strong directional trigger. Now pair that with a momentum shift, and it is highly likely we see those directional continuations upwards. So that is the bullish case scenario for the weekly. So the next question is, what will it take on the short term for Ethereum to break through this weekly 50 EMA and subsequently push through this weekly RSI, which will be the trigger for a momentum shift to occur and the price to continue upwards? So let's now zoom over to the daily chart. We can take a look at this on the daily chart. If you are looking for a new exchange or just want to support the channel, sign up to BitUnix with the link down below. You'll get a lifetime trading fee discount of 15%, which can build up to 45% based on your trading volume, as well as access to a bonus reward center, and of course, all of the exclusive campaigns we run on this exchange. You'll also get access to BitUnix being a non-KYC exchange, meaning you can sign up from anywhere in the globe without regulations. And most importantly, I only promote exchanges I trust and I use. As you can see, I trade on BitUnix very regularly, being the highest VIP level with over $500 million in trading volume for the last 30 days. And lastly, if you were interested in signing up to our other 2 exchanges, BingX or BitGet, you can also do that via the links down below. You as well will get the 15% trading fee discount and everything else that comes with it. Go ahead and sign up. Thank you for supporting. Let's jump back in. This is our daily chart for Ethereum. I'm going to go ahead and delete this RSI trend line. I'm going to keep everything else in at the moment. As we can see, we had an incredibly clear macro downtrend for Ethereum. Of course, this is our downtrend spanning back since that most recent higher high and lower high on the RSI on the weekly. Of course, we broke through that weekly downtrend back in the 9th or 8th of May, so earlier this month. We pushed through that trend line, and as a consequence of breaking out of what was a multi-month downtrend, we saw a significant rally toward the upside, pushing all the way upwards into around $2,700. If we are looking at that weekly 50 EMA, we can see the weekly 50 EMA is now represented by this black horizontal trend line. We could also see we have got an uptrend here on the RSI. The uptrend is actually almost breaking down. This is something we're going to discuss in today's video, as it is a warning sign. And of course, our next levels of horizontal resistance are sitting right here just above 2,800. This is going to be the resistance we need to break through to then see a continuation into these prior highs. So let's break it down from where we are now. On the daily chart, we can see, number one, we have attempted a few times to break above the weekly 50 EMA. We have failed to do so. What we can see immediately is our RSI uptrending, and of course, we have got a major horizontal support at around 2,100, represented by this gray box. So when we're looking at it contextually, we have got 2 trigger points here from a horizontal scale. We have got our major support at 2,100, and our next major resistance at, 2,800, 2,850. So we know that to see a continuation upwards into our next resistances, 3,400, 2,800 needs to break upwards, and for that to occur, we need to get above the 2,550 EMA on the weekly, and we need to do all of this before the RSI breaks down. So let's take a look at this now. What we can also see is we have also got that 200 moving average providing as a daily area of support. So this is how it's going to play out. Worst case scenario for Ethereum here. we see this daily 200 moving average breakdown. If the daily 200 moving average breaks down, we fail to sustain above the daily 200 moving average, what we can see is we enter this low historical resistance range, the VRPV gap. This is essentially a range on the horizontal scale where volume has been significantly lower, and therefore breaking into it, we have significantly less support, and therefore volatility would increase, resulting in directional continuations of great proportion toward the downside. Now pair that breakdown with the fact if we see a loss of the 200 moving average, we will very likely see the RSI breakdown, indicating a negative momentum shift, which is leading for a directional continuation toward the downside. So worst case scenario for Ethereum, we lose that daily 200 moving average, we see the RSI breakdown, and we see a steeper correction to 2,100. That is worst case scenario. Best case scenario for Ethereum, we'll discuss in a second on the shorter time frame, but the consequence of the best case scenario, the result of the best case scenario, will be an attempt to break through 2,800, which will result in like we mentioned already, number one, a weekly positive momentum shift on the RSI, and of course the break of the 50 EMA. Those will occur and result in strong continuations upwards. So what we can see here for Ethereum is we've seen a fantastic move toward the upside. And I guess what you could nail this down to is this is now the first point of consolidation, the first point of profit taking, the first point of indecision, which has developed in the charts since a large rally. And it is totally normal to see that. The market is trying to find whether or not there is demand at these levels to sustain, or whether or not this is overbought in comparison, overextended, and it is ready for a flush toward the downside to meet lower levels of demand before we see continuations back upwards. Let's take a look at now what needs to happen on the short term to facilitate that continuation and avoid that 200 moving average breakdown. So we're going to go ahead and draw a horizontal ray in at that 200 moving average over here so we can map that out where we are. So this is going to be the 4-hourly chart over here. We can see the 4-hourly chart's pretty clear. We've had a lot of volatility here on the 4-hourly, just as we have had a lot of volatility on the Bitcoin price chart. So already what we can see is we did have a bearish divergence develop. Of course, this bearish divergence did span quite some time over here, having the bearish divergence more or less eroded when we broke through and invalidated. So we had this exhaustion, which has been absorbed over here, and we no longer have this weakness present on the charts. So the probabilities are in favor of continuations upwards. But what we'll be watching is we're watching how the price reacts to these higher lows. So if we break below this low point over here, this is around 2,300, we will be subsequently losing that daily 200 moving average, and of course we'll make a structural breakdown, which could result in a correction back toward the downside. So provided we sustain above around 2,400, we are expecting the price to continue toward the upside and break that 50 EMA on the weekly and eventually result in a rally to 2,800. For us to be confident that move is going to play out, we need to start seeing some higher highs created. What we can see here, we have a high, we have a lower high, we have a lower high, we have a lower high. We need to start to see the price break through some of these levels to formulate a structural shift and continuation. If we see the price action break through, we'll be confident in continuations. Until then, more or less neutral with a slight degree, a slight bias toward the upside here, as we have still been creating these higher lows on the short term, and we are sitting above a major support and a massive volume gap. So that is the Ethereum analysis, guys. To summarize everything, the weekly charts are looking good. They're not looking amazing, okay? And I'm not talking about the broader picture, right? We have looked amazing for quite some time now, but we have now run into a period of selling pressure. The selling pressure has mostly been absorbed on the short term for now, which has prevented a negative momentum shift occurring on the daily, and of course, a loss of the 200 moving average. Whether or not that will sustain going forward is something we have to monitor. Of course, if we lose those recent lows, we will see a negative momentum shift. We will see a breakdown and thus a continuation lower. However, if we are able to break through this little short-term range and break these highs, it is likely the next target is going to be 2,800 before we then run into our next point of resistance. That is it for the weekly. For us to be incredibly bullish on that weekly, again, the number one thing we are watching, if we have one point that we are watching, it is going to be that momentum shift to occur. And if that momentum shift occurs, it's very likely we see an incredibly sustained and large rally back into these levels on the higher time frame. Thanks for tuning in and have a fantastic day. We'll catch you in the next video on this channel. Until then, bye.